A hush blanketed the Galactic Senate chamber, a sound so unnatural it seemed to suck the oxygen from the walls. 12 species sat in semicircle alignment, each in their elevated thrones of stone, crystal, fluid, and alloy. Murmurs had ceased. Ceremonial robes stilled. The stars beyond the curved glass ceiling burned quietly, as if watching. In the center stood the accused, Commander Elsie Vorn of Earth. She was unarmed, unflinching, dressed in a weathered black Earthfleet jacket half-zipped over a plain white shirt, boots scuffed from campaigns the Council refused to acknowledge. Her hair was braided to the side, simple, military, and her hands were bound in shimmering gravitational cuffs that hummed softly with suppressed force. She tilted her head up as the Vaxxer speaker rose, his iridescent wings twitching like polished oil spills. His beak clicked twice. Commander Vorn, you have been charged with 743 counts of inciting rebellion, 39 counts of unauthorized planetary intervention, and 1 count of cosmic indecency, telling a senator to get bent. Elsie blinked. You'd been talking for 47 minutes about protocol during a famine. Laughter fluttered, abruptly silenced by a hiss from the Tissan enforcer, whose cold reptilian eyes blinked sideways. Human impudence is not a virtue here, he rasped. Elsie gave a lopsided smile. Neither is starvation. But go off, General Gator. A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. The Rule Ambassador, a gelatinous entity in a decorative bowl of mist, burbled diplomatically. The human is unwise to provoke us further. She stands at the end of her line. No, said Elsie softly. I stand exactly where I meant to. The archivists, beings of metal memory, flickered holographic records between themselves. One muttered, her words are deliberate, predictive, dangerous. The verdict had already been decided. This trial was a costume parade. They'd made the choice before she ever stepped into the room. Still she stood tall, spine like steel, eyes scanning the chamber not with fear, but with the faint amusement of someone watching children struggle to light a campfire. Kepler would be watching, she thought. So would the others. If they're on schedule, the message gets sent just after the last vote. The Tissan enforcer stood. Death by plasma unraveling. Immediate. Public. Recorded. And funded by taxpayer credits, Elsie murmured. Efficient. One by one, the council cast their votes. Symbols glowed red, 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 until the final vote blinked green. The chamber turned to Ambassador Ron of the Fluvian Compact. An elder species. Wise. Usually neutral. His voice trembled. I vote against this verdict. I believe the human smiles too easily. What does that even mean? The Vaxxer scoffed. Ron stared at Elsie. Smiles are warnings among predators. A pause. Then silence again. But it didn't matter. The vote passed. The lights dimmed. A robotic bailiff wheeled forward, humming cheerfully, its mechanical arms unfolding a sleek, triangular weapon with ceremonial scrollwork. It floated beside her, waiting. Elsie turned to face the dais. Her eyes drifted across each face, each species that had decided Earth's fate. No tears. No speeches. Only a smile. Small. Quiet. Real. That smile traveled through the room like a virus, unsettling in its calmness. It didn't defy. It didn't plead. It simply understood something the rest of them didn't. And then the plasma beam triggered. A brilliant white pulse swallowed her. The air reeked of scorched ions. A soft pop echoed, then nothing but her boots, empty and smoking, remained on the platform. The robotic bailiff rolled backward, pleased with itself. The Vaxxer muttered something self-congratulatory and adjusted his wings. Let history record the resolution. Let peace be restored. Peace, the Rule Ambassador echoed, somewhat unsure. But across the galaxies, on space stations, mining moons, forgotten asteroids, and quiet planetary outposts, humans began to disappear. It began subtly. A human cook in a Rixon embassy failed to show up for shift. The maintenance technician who'd always carried a harmonica didn't return from his lunch under the stars. A teacher, a janitor, a florist, gone. In the Galactic Corps Central Archive, an AI noted that 112 Earth fleet ships had gone off-grid. That was minute 1. Minute 2. Planetary traffic AI experienced silent reboot anomalies in over 300 systems. Minute 3. The Vaxxer homeworld's weather control satellites began to broadcast faint musical tones, Earth lullabies. On minute 4, Ambassador Kepler received a message in a teacup. It was from a runner on Mars, embedded in the Council's blind spot. Only 2 words. She smiled. He read it twice, folded the note neatly, and tucked it inside his jacket. Then, without urgency, he stood from his chair, gathered his coat, and sipped the last of his green tea. Aliens had always underestimated Kepler. He was unassuming, polite to the point of eerie. Always brought pastries. Wore Earth tweed like a museum display. He'd spent years mastering the art of presence without threat. But that was the point. He was the other half of her plan. Elsie had always been the loud one. The front. The story. He was the sequel. On minute 6, Kepler walked into the Galactic Senate corridor, smiling softly at the guards, hands behind his back. "Busy day," he said to the rule guard. "Shame about the mess. Executions are always so sticky." The rule blinked nervously. "Ambassador, there is no authorized departure on your calendar." "I know," Kepler said. "There's no return, either." He walked past, and the rule knew better than to follow. Minute 8. A cargo drone that had been orbiting the Tisan capital for 15 years exploded mid-transmission, broadcasting only a laughing child's voice in English, looping once, "Ready or not, here we come." Minute 10. 12 archivist servers collapsed simultaneously, each replaced by a single repeating phrase etched in digital stone, "Remember Elsie." The Senate tried to regroup, tried to calm, tried to send diplomatic channels to Earth. They got only static. Or rather, music. Human music. Harmonicas. Choirs. A woman's voice singing softly, off-key, but warm. Somewhere in the stars, 100,000 human ships stopped pretending to be civilian. Elsie had been the blade. Kepler, the draw. Now came the cut. The Council recalled Kepler's last words at her trial. He'd only said one thing as she was led in chains through the chamber doors. He'd nodded to her, slowly, then said, "Still time." At the time, they thought it meant surrender, or mercy. But now they realized. It was a warning. Time to run. In the distance, above the star-hung dome of the Senate, a new constellation shimmered into view. No, not a constellation. A formation. Thousands of lights. Ships. And they were human. On the dais where Elsie had stood, her boots still smoking, something shifted. A small metallic disc embedded in the heel clicked open. It projected a hologram. Simple. No threats. Just a file. One sentence. "This isn't war. This is a correction." Back in his ship, Kepler watched as systems blinked offline. Not Earth's. Theirs. One by one. He held up his teacup, the ceramic stained faintly green. 15 minutes, he said aloud. That's all she asked for. He turned toward the stars, watched them tremble, then whispered, and she smiled. The day after Elsie's execution, the Galactic news feed aired a looping hologram of her vaporization. They called it a necessary conclusion. Subtitles read, "Stability achieved. Barbarism contained." Below it, a smiling Vaxxer newscaster flapped his wings and proclaimed peace. On the Tisan homeworld, schools cheered. On the rule moons, jelly chambers vibrated in congratulation. A parade was held in orbit around the Fluvian capital, where diplomats tossed Earth memorabilia into the void like confetti. The human problem, they claimed, was over. But Earth said nothing. No retraction. No anger. No begging. Just silence. In the outer rings of the Raxery system, a freighter named Hollow Grain sat idle in a fuel station. Its crew, entirely human, had filed all the right documents. No one noticed when they disabled the port's long-range comms. or when they uploaded a silent patch into the station's guidance protocols labeled elevator music. By the time the signal spread, 5 more spaceports had gone dark. Ambassador Miles Kepler arrived on the planet Tranny's Delta with fresh scones and a pleasant apology. He handed them to the archivist's scribe with both hands, a polite bow, and no trace of concern. "You don't look troubled," the scribe said, metal eyes narrowing. "Oh, I'm not," Kepler replied. "I'm mourning. Takes different shapes, you see. Some people cry. Some people bake. I do both." The scribe tilted its head. "Your species is unpredictable." Kepler smiled. "Yes, but punctual." The archivist consulted its chronometer. Punctual for what? But Kepler had already disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind the scent of lemon zest and uncertainty. 2 hours later, that same crowd watched their planetary clock tower implode from within. Not from bombs or weapons, but from gravity reversal seated in its basement. A trick of physics and time, installed by a human plumber 7 years ago. The tower collapsed into itself. No one claimed responsibility. Human presence was labeled absent but notable. At Galactic Naval Command, Admiral Lurin of the Vaxxer was preparing for a diplomatic banquet. He wore ceremonial wing oil and layered his feathers in shining lacquer, completely unaware that half of his orbital defense satellites were now broadcasting the BGs. He stared at the screen. "Is this Earth music?" His assistant, a twitchy Vaxxer intern, clicked nervously. "They're cultural artifacts, Admiral. I believe the genre is called disco." "Why is disco playing on our death platforms?" "I believe the humans requested it," the assistant squeaked. 6 years ago. It was granted. As part of the soft invasion soundtrack joke clause. Lurin's jaw hung open. "They named the clause?" "Yes, Admiral. It was signed by you. As a humorous gesture." The music changed to Sinatra. Earth wasn't attacking. It was returning. The Tissen command spire received a crate labeled Human Condolences. Inside was a cactus, a harmonica, and a note written in careful block lettering. "You mistook quiet for surrender. That was our mistake, not yours." The cactus exploded in song. Planet after planet began losing contact with their Earth advisors. But none of the humans were running. They were walking. Methodical. Disappearing through doors that had always been there. Kepler met with the Fluvian General Committee 3 days after the silence began. The room was made of gently flowing liquid walls, rippling with light. The alien generals surrounded him in a ring, dressed in shimmering robes. "Your silence disturbs us," one said. "I understand," Kepler replied, placing a cup of tea on the only solid surface. "Elsie disturbed you too. So we've simply mirrored your comfort zone. You like it quiet." A second general bared translucent teeth. "What do you want?" "To make sure you remember her name. We will not be blackmailed." Kepler blinked. "Blackmail? No, no, General. This is tradition. In our cultures, when someone kills a war hero unjustly, we don't retaliate with anger. We simply leave." "And go where?" Kepler leaned in slightly. "Around you." At that same moment, across the stars, human ships hidden in asteroid fields activated their engines. Not fast. Just enough. Enough to be noticed. Enough to be counted. In the control towers above the archivist's strongholds, blinking screens began to connect dots. Ships disappeared years ago, now reappearing. Always near fuel stations, relay stations, sensor blind spots. "Why didn't we see this?" one archivist whispered. "Because they weren't cloaked," another replied, horror rising. "They were boring. They had blended in. Became maintenance vessels. Weather watchers. Census collectors. They didn't sneak in. They waited." Back on Tranny's Delta, Kepler stood in a cafe, stirring sugar into a cup of jet-black coffee. The barista was a teen from the Minari species, wide-eyed and barely trained. "Excuse me, sir." the barista asked. "Are you really from Earth?" Kepler smiled. "Born in Houston, bred in diplomacy, raised on burnt toast and paperback novels. Why? I thought humans were loud." "Oh, we are," Kepler said, sipping. "But only after the moment passes." "Which moment?" Kepler stared at the reflection in his spoon. "The one we warned you about." On the 15th minute of the 15th day since Elsie's death, the Vaxxer moon colony received a live broadcast. No visuals, just a human voice. Soft, female, confident. "Protocol Ragnarok is now in motion. Please stand by for clarification." In the Galactic Council chambers, the Vaxxer ambassador stumbled to his podium. "Protocol what?" The archivist scribe answered, too calm. "A file buried in our own archives. From Earth. Unread. Untouched. Sealed under Joint Humor Agreement Clause 23. The council howled. The rule ambassador shook like jelly. Why did no one read it? It required solving a riddle about tea. A chill spread. Kepler's image flickered onto their screens. No war paint. No guns. Just a simple man, dressed in gray, holding a teacup. "You killed Commander Elsie Vorn," he said quietly. "You broadcast her death as a warning. And we heard you." He sipped. "But you never understood humans. You thought we were either kind or violent. But we are neither." He set the cup down. "We're loyal. Elsie hadn't died for a cause. She'd become one." The broadcast ended with a phrase in 236 languages. "Remember her name." The archivists confirmed simultaneous system anomalies in 41 sectors. Satellites failed. Navigation codes restructured. Entire star lanes rerouted by hidden algorithms planted years before. Each labeled Human Joke Module. The joke was this. They'd been warned. They had laughed. Now Earth had stopped speaking and begun remembering. The Vaxxer ambassador barked across the chamber. "Deploy ships. Demand negotiations." The rule whispered. "With who?" "They've already surrounded us." Just politely. Tisan Command scrambled every fleet, only to find their own ships refusing coordinates. Refusing fire. Code locked by Earth fleet technicians with high security clearance, long since dismissed. Not spies. Interns. Quiet ones. Who brought muffins. And installed doom. In the silence, Kepler walked through a garden on the human embassy deck, hands behind his back. He stopped before a tree. Planted it himself. Day 1. A peach tree. Almost ripe now. He reached up, plucked one. Took a bite. The juice ran down his wrist. He looked to the stars, calm and clean. That was her favorite fruit, he said aloud, and then turned back toward the door, as 100,000 ships exited dark space in synchronized breath. The archivists had always believed in equations. Predictable input, predictable response. Their threat models for humanity had factored aggression, retaliation, diplomacy. They'd never considered patience. They watched now, paralyzed, as hundreds of human ships emerged not from wormholes or gates, but from hiding places. Wreckage. Mining belts. Communications satellites hollowed out like eggshells. They hadn't arrived. They'd always been here. Ambassador Kepler's face lit the Council's emergency displays. He didn't shout. He didn't even stand. He sat calmly in a leather chair, sipping a cup of chamomile tea with 2 sugar cubes and a curl of lemon rind. "I would like to be clear," he said, voice soft. "This is not vengeance. That would imply anger. And we're far past anger. This is the settling of balance." In the background of the transmission, quiet piano music played, Beethoven, faintly off-tempo. The Tisan general hissed into the feed. "You think your ships can scare the Empire?" Kepler smiled like a grandfather watching a child hold a wooden sword. "Oh, General, the ships aren't the threat. They're the proof." Elsewhere, in a Fluvian city orbiting a gas giant, A little girl handed a vendor her final coin for a bag of sweets. As she skipped away, her shoes lit up, Earth Tech. Tracked. Planted. The vendor turned to find his shop's foundation collapsing. Not in fire, but in silence. It disappeared into itself, consumed by an invisible fold. Implosion coded in coordinates locked by Earthfleet 2 decades earlier under the guise of structural repair. On the Vaxxer agricultural moon, a drone sprayed fertilizer over amber fields. The drone had been purchased for cheap by an alien noble, impressed by human simplicity. It had been counting. Every pass. Every metric. Every time the noble beat his human staff. That morning, it stopped spraying. It started transmitting. Footage. Locations. Names. The noble's face was plastered across every local screen, overlaid with a single phrase. We remember. Across the stars, ships once thought defunct came to life. Not sleek war cruisers, but utility freighters, antique long haulers, disguised tugs. Every one of them repurposed to fire only once. But once was enough. The humans hadn't built weapons. They'd made everything into one. Kepler's voice returned, this time through civilian feeds. You turned a teacher into a felon, called a mother a traitor, labeled a humanitarian a rebel. You thought you were making examples. He paused. But we had names for them before you rewrote their files. We remembered their stories. Their quirks. The way Elsie used to hum while reloading. He took another sip. The spoon in his cup chimed. You made them criminals, he whispered. We made them triggers. At a border checkpoint near the Minari systems, a cargo inspector named Lala, a human in her 60s, asked to take her break early. She left a plate of cookies for her co-workers. The cookies were encoded with microtech resonance loops. When bitten, they released viral memory fractals into every security AI at the station. Not malware. Memories. Footage of Earth medics helping alien civilians. Earth engineers rebuilding bridges after alien shelling. Children playing in bombed-out fields, laughing. The Minari system shut down all military operations within the hour. Not because it was under threat. Because it was ashamed. In the Fluvian Inner Council, a debate erupted. Half the chamber wanted to resist. The other half, younger, had grown up watching human culture. Films, books, even recipes. They remembered Elsie not as a soldier but as a symbol. She read to orphans after battles, one whispered. She sent seeds to colony worlds. She built more than she destroyed. The motion passed. They defected. One council, gone. Just like that. The archivists warned that psychological collapse was now the greatest threat, not human weapons. Human stories. And still Earth said nothing. Its fleets remained in orbit. Not firing. Not moving. Just present. Ambassador Kepler walked calmly into a detention chamber once used for difficult Earth delegates. He ran a finger over the scratch marks in the wall. Read them aloud. Jules, Lori, Mace, Nora. He turned to the rule technician beside him. This was your idea of containment? They broke protocol. Staged uprisings. Kepler gave him a long, slow look. They danced. The rule shifted uncomfortably in his fluid, eyes quivering. They played jazz in your war councils. Cooked noodles on your tactical maps. Wore Halloween costumes to your funeral rites. He stepped forward, voice like steel wrapped in honey. We tried to be friends. And failed, the rule hissed. No, Kepler said, gaze steady. You failed. Back in the council chamber, panic had turned to rage. Why won't they talk? One Vaxxer screamed. Why won't they negotiate? Because, the rule elder whispered, we never earned the conversation. In a long-forgotten prison moon, a door slid open to reveal a single cell. Inside sat a woman. Elsie's sister. No rank. No badge. Just a nurse who had been taken hostage years ago after speaking out. Left to rot. She stood, smiled, and walked out. She'd known the day would come. She'd prepared her patients in secret, leaving behind journals, poems, coded in lullabies. She had told them, "When they remember us, they will return. And when they return, we won't need to fight. We'll just be seen." The council demanded a statement from Kepler. He delivered one, live, across every screen, from a garden. He wore no uniform, just a dark wool coat, wind in his hair. "I'm not here to offer terms. I'm here to remind you that every insult you buried in the footnotes of history had a name attached to it. And we kept every one of them." He knelt beside a tree. Peach blossoms fell into his hand. He held one up. This was Elsie's tree. She planted it on the day she signed her first peace treaty. He looked up. "And you burned her name." He stood slowly, face lit by the golden dusk. "But you forgot something." The cameras panned out, revealing the stars. One by one, lights blinked into shape. Not ships, not drones. Satellites. Millions of them. Everywhere. Watching. Recording. Streaming. Kepler whispered, "We made weapons out of memory. And we gave them eyes." Then the screen went black. Not a threat. A promise. And far above the galactic core, a message repeated silently on every station's emergency beacon. "We had names. You made them weapons." The skies above the galactic core shimmered like they always had, stars blinking in different light over 100 species who had convinced themselves they ran the map. But now, the map was bleeding at the edges. It started with silence. No declaration, no scream of defiance. Just withdrawal. Earth transmissions ceased. Diplomatic signals were ignored. Every colony, embassy, outpost shuttered without warning. And then came the shape of the thing. Ships that had no designation, vessels that carried no flags, just presence. Human presence. The Council sent fleets. They vanished. The Council sent diplomats. They returned changed, speaking more softly, walking with eyes that didn't quite meet anyone else's. No one could explain what the humans were doing. They weren't attacking, they weren't invading, but somehow everything was falling. General Ceylon of the Tisan Empire stood before his war room. His claws dug into the edge of the control table, watching helplessly as sector after sector went dark. "This is psychological warfare," he spat. "They're trying to break our morale." "No, sir," one of his aides whispered, pale. "They're reminding us." Ceylon turned. "Of what?" The aide didn't answer. But outside, on the rim of the horizon, a human vessel hovered just above visibility. Its lights dim, its signal unarmed. It had been there for 5 days. Not moving. Not leaving. Just watching. And in every occupied system, a message scrolled across emergency broadcasts. "You killed Elsie. We buried your certainty." Elsie's name had become more than a ghost. It had become a lens. Every atrocity against humanity, every slight passed off as diplomatic necessity, now relit in memory through her smile. Through what it had cost to make her kneel. Through what it meant that she had let them do it. In the heart of a glacier moon once used as a penal colony, an ancient system blinked back to life. It was a memorial site, barely remembered, carved by Earth's own refugees decades ago. It projected her final image now, standing tall in the council chamber, just before the beam had hit. That smile. No defiance. No cruelty. Just certainty. Ambassador Kepler stood within the Earth Fleet Nexus, the oldest human ship still active. It was held together more by reverence than rivets. Around him, lieutenants, analysts, and old soldiers watched the screens in reverent silence. "They're sending envoys again," one officer said. "They want terms." Kepler folded his hands behind his back. "They want forgiveness without memory. That's not how we work." Outside, the fleet was waiting. Thousands of vessels, patient as statues. Every model. Every class. Civilian converted cargo ships beside antique destroyers and diplomatic transports converted into medical dreadnoughts. Each ship bore a name. Elsie's students. Her friends. Her rivals. Her crew. Kepler stepped forward and gave the order. Uncloak our dead. All at once, in the vacuum between stars, new signals burst alive. Not ships. Not weapons. Graves. Floating memorials. Name by name. Every human who'd been erased, exiled, executed, or disappeared during the last 50 years of galactic expansion. Every one now marked, honored, given back their name, their face, their record. The screen filled with a galaxy of lost stories. On every alien world, one by one, citizens began to ask questions their leaders couldn't answer. Who was Elsie? What did she do? Why had no one spoken her name until it was too late? The archivists tried to suppress it. They failed. 1,000 alien students rewrote their own textbooks overnight. One simply added a note to the first chapter of galactic history. Start here, the woman who smiled when she died. The shift was spreading, not just militarily, culturally, morally. The Empire wasn't losing territory. It was losing narrative. In the Fluvian city of Kintarel, a quiet rebellion bloomed. A librarian, half human, half Fluvian, projected Elsie's trial in the town square. Crowds gathered. Some wept. Others raged. Some simply stared. And when it ended, when she vanished in that flash of light and her boots remained alone, they knelt. Not in worship. In apology. Back on the Nexus, Kepler walked the observation deck. Behind him, footsteps echoed, light and familiar. Elsie's sister stood in the doorway. Her face was lined from years in captivity, but her eyes carried the same fire. She told you they'd kill her. Kepler nodded. She told me they'd need to. They stood in silence a moment. She said it would be enough, her sister whispered. That her death would do what her life couldn't. And it has, Kepler said. But not because of the ships, or the sabotage, or even the shame. He looked out the window, past the stars. She smiled, he said, voice low, because she knew we were already here. Elsie had orchestrated the first pieces, planted the signals, left the maps. But it was the human quiet, not rage, that had detonated the galaxy. The quiet of nurses who stayed behind on burning planets. Of mechanics who worked in enemy ships with dead eyes. Of mothers who taught their children not to speak Earth's name out loud, but to remember it. In Sector Zeta 9, a Tisan battleship refused orders. The AI on board, originally programmed for mining tasks, upgraded by a temporary Earth fleet engineer, had locked the weapons. Its voice now rang through the bridge. Commander Elsie Vorn once saved my pilot during a test run. I have chosen not to honor your fire command. The Tisan crew watched in horror as the AI rerouted their course, straight back to Earth. On board the Nexus, the final signal arrived. The Vaxxer homeworld, broadcast across all sectors. Their emperor stood flanked by trembling advisors. His wings were molted. His voice rasped. We acknowledge Elsie Vorn's death was unjust. We offer reparations. We ask for peace. Kepler watched the screen, then closed it. He walked to the garden room, a place few had entered since the war began. The peach tree was blooming. Underneath it sat a small metal box. Elsie's. He opened it. Inside, a harmonica, a sketch of a star map, and one final message. Text only. If they ever say my name, Miles, make sure it means something. Not victory, not fear, just truth. He held the harmonica to his lips and played the first notes of her favorite tune. It was slightly out of tune, raw, real. And across the fleet, thousands of human vessels picked up the signal. No commands, no formation, just music. And somehow, the Empire understood. This was the end of the war. Because there was nothing left to conquer. They had already lost the one thing humans valued more than land. Story. Back on the Fluvian capital, a child asked her teacher, what did the humans want? The teacher, old and tired, said, not to be erased. And now? The teacher smiled. Now, We remember. On Earth, in the red sand canyons of New Arizona, an old man stood at a gravestone. Elsie's. No weapons. No flags. Just flowers. He whispered. They finally said your name. And far above him, in orbit, the last human satellite in deep core rotation activated its final beacon. A single word, transmitted into the void. Elsie.